Welcome to a world of mystery. A world so dark that you can barely see. A world where the macabre becomes a reality, and your reality becomes the strange and unusual. This is an October edition of the Cain Stevens Paranormal Super Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cain Stevens Super Show, the super show in all the land, I would hope, but you never really know. I do have a super guest. This is a guy who I've been trying to get on the show for a while. He just so happened to live only a stone's throw away from me not too long ago, but he moved. Thank goodness, probably for him. You wouldn't want to live near me, so. But with that being said, I have a world-renowned author in my eyes, and soon to be in yours. If you're living under a rock and you haven't heard of his book, I have the author of Beyond Lincoln, A History of Nebraska Hauntings. We have Tayden Bundy, everybody. So we're giving him the ovation. How are you, Tayden?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you.
You know where I'm pumped to have you here, man. I want to talk to you about that house of yours that you lived at, man. You know, I used to drive by it all the time, and that driveway had to have been treacherous, man, especially there, wasn't it?
It was no good. It was also one of the hardest reasons why it was to sell, because it was just where, I would tell people, like, when someone like deliver food to me, or they were delivering a package, I'd try to tell them, like, hey, heads up, it's a steep driveway, and they'd be like, oh no, it's okay. And then they'd get there and they'd be like, oh, thanks for warning me, because it was legit a steep driveway. And then it was on a busy street, which it was no, yeah, shoveling it was horrible. Getting out of it when ice, yeah, it was bad. I'm glad.
But you got it sold, right? That's a good thing. You
I
finally
did.
Yeah, somebody took that chance. Maybe they had like a SUV with four-wheel drive or something.
Right.
But every time we drove by it, like even my kids would be like, "Man, that's a steep driveway." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, I don't know that guy, but I know who that guy is. I actually marched over there because I wanted your book at one point.
Right.
And I marched over there because it was like, it's stupid if you live so close. And I just bought the book over there, which was really cool. But man, I remember thinking, if I tumble down here, I'm going like straight into the street. I'm done. I'll be the ghost that you're mentioning soon, Oh man. But no, the book is fantastic, man. I mean, if people haven't read the book yet, I really suggest to the listener out there to check it out, especially it doesn't matter if you're in Nebraska, if you're just into the paranormal, this is your guy to talk to. I mean, he's tapped into it, he's tuned into paranormal. I believe you do investigation as well. And
yes, that's true.
And are you still investigating with Jason, or do you investigate with Jason Faust?
Yeah, that's who I'd predominantly go with. Honestly, I don't go with anybody else. Really.
Yeah.
So him and I, yeah, we go to various locations, usually places that are pretty close to around like Lincoln and stuff in Nebraska. But I mean, we've ventured into Iowa, and we've talked about Kansas and going around some other places. But yeah, that's who I work with. He's a great guy.
He is, man. When I had him on the show, I befriended think I befriended him through the Heartland Paranormal page or whatever. And he came over, did the show. He was a wonderful guest. I still kind of talk to him about paranormal and stuff. I run some things by him. Most of it's probably garbage, but I like to get I'll bet that you're a lot like him. You guys take a different approach to the paranormal. You guys don't seem to get too excited over all the little dinky stuff that everybody else does, and I think that's great for the field. That's kind of how I want to be as an investigator. Like, I'm investigating now. I just started a group with a couple people called oddly enough, Debunked Paranormal, and we're trying to do, but we're not out there like trying to shoot it down. We actually want to help the field just like everybody else. But when you go on investigations, do you guys, like, what instruments do you guys think are good? What instruments do you think are useless? Can you give me kind of your take on that before we get into like the book and everything?
Sure. Jason and I, when we go to locations, we are pretty minimalistic. We like to really use our own ears more than anything else. So we will bring, both of us have cameras, video cameras that we use with IR, and we both like to record with just like a regular recorder.
Right.
He has some of the more fancy stuff, some of the millimeters, and I actually like to rely a little bit more on just like K2s for, just to sort of eliminate some things more than anything else, not necessarily to show that that's that there's a haunting there, just that if there's something that's bringing some sort of scientifically based energy maybe into an area or something like that, then it sort of stay away from that in terms of when we're actually doing an investigation that, hey, this is charged with something that might potentially be something that's causing interference here.
Right.
So it's more so for us, like we really just enjoy I think haunted locations or locations that are, deemed haunted or have stories associated with them, and a lot of it's about the experience. He's much more Jason is much better at the research aspect of paranormal research and investigations. I am a big advocate for the history. I love the stories people tell. I love to listen to stories associated with hauntings, and I love to delve into the research for them. And I know he also is, very much in tune with the historical value of, especially of locations in general. And what I love about these places, especially that they do overnights or that they do tours, is that they're keeping these buildings alive and they're allowing them to continue to exist. And that's
Yeah.
a major component for me. So when we go in, we're really just trying to understand the history of the location. Sometimes I like to go in what, I'm sure that you've heard this term blind, and where I don't know anything about a location, and just try to kind of feel it out. And then later on afterwards, I'll research, and he might know some things about it. So then while we're in there, we're just relying on our, like what I might see or feel or, hear. Then he can sort of, you know, add some information to that if I'm like, hey, there's something, is this something going on? Like, is this possibly related to the history at some point? But yeah, we're pretty minimalist. We like cameras, we like recording, just basic recording devices.
Right.
We do, like I said, millimeters and stuff like that, and temperature. We're really big on like very minimalistic type investigations.
And that's a great way of going about it. I'm not, and I do want to say I'm not crapping on all of the groups out there that get excited about it. I mean, everyone does it in their own way. I mean, I wasn't there on there. One thing that's important to say is if you're not at the investigation when you watch a video online or whatever, you don't know what they were feeling. You're just catching a little snippet. Maybe they're doing like entertaining, kind of an entertaining video just to kind of catch your eye. So all of that type of stuff. But I don't think we're all out there to. I can't say from. I know myself. We're not out. We're not out to prove it in like a deceitful way. Like we would like to prove it, like just like everybody else would. But I don't think everyone's out to deceive people. I think there's just so much skepticism towards the paranormal field, which is why I like to talk about it so much because I want it to be an accredited science, something that is studied just like any science at a university, that people take it seriously. I personally am so sick of the tinfoil hat stuff that you get online, especially people will join these groups on Facebook, on TikTok, and then they would just sit there and just pick you apart for whatever reason. And I don't understand that mentality. Like, aren't you at least a little bit curious as to why these people are, so many people are saying, because I mean, I think I read a stat not too long ago that like, what is it, like 45% of people polled were asked about if they believe in ghosts, and they said they did. I mean, that's a pretty high, and I think it's actually higher in other polls. But I think a lot of people do have ghost stories and they believe in ghosts. It's been passed down from generation to generation, which is why your book was so important, especially for the area. I know when I was a kid, A Guide to the Ghosts of Lincoln was like the biggest book of my life. Like when I got that at like the book club or something, I like ran home and I ripped through this thing and I read it like immediately, like, I mean, just, and I probably read it like over and over again, at least 6 times. And then as I got older, I would start to go to these locations, and I would try to find things. And I've always kind of been into ghost hunting, and then and now I'm into investigating. There is a major difference between ghost hunting and investigating. The ghost hunter, as a guy named Kirk McManus will say, it's just the guys who go there, want to get the videos, want to have fun, and that's great too. And then there's the investigator, the buzzkills, the guys who go in with the instruments, but it's still fun. But we also have like a mission. We're also looking for answers, like, is this electrical outlet emitting so much EMF that it's causing people to have, like, severe paranoia or psychosis or something.
Right.
That's why we're doing it, right?
For
And
sure.
let's be honest, it's fun. It's fun to go to these locations. It's fun to travel, go to different towns, walk around. I mean, that for me, that's more fun than anything. I mean, I imagine that's how it is for you and Jason as well. Just the kind of this, just going to places, right?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, we love to chat it up with people, and and he's really funny because he will talk to anyone about ghosts and just get them in that conversation. I'm a little bit more I'm a writer, so I'm a little bit more introverted.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
he's very much like, hey, any ghosts around here? Like,
Yeah,
and because he wants to talk to the locals. He wants to, he wants us to be able to hear what people around these areas have to say, because a lot of places we go to are that we've been to anyway have been smaller towns, or surrounded by smaller towns, or in more rural areas. So
well,
yeah, it's just about getting to know people. And you get, I mean, I've personally had a few, oh, that's just a bunch of hooey stuff, or
yeah,
and that's fine. I also understand the other side of it, kids telling stories, right?
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, we just really we go into it with it's a community as well. And the people that run these locations, they're part of a broader community of people who do this. And so a lot of these people are very connected with each other, and especially in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas area for sure. I know that there's a lot of people that I hear the same names pretty frequently who own these places. So it's also about getting to know them and understanding what they're doing and helping them promote their, it's a place of business, but it's also a place to share the history and the, haunted locations. These haunted locations are stories, and with those stories come the history. So yeah, and it's a fun experience to get to know them, and to get to know these places, and why they're still around, and how we can continue to share them with people in the future.
right. Well, how did you generate your list of topics that you were going to cover in your book? How did you go about that? Like, give the listeners a little bit of the process of why you chose said locations, and what you got out of it and what you did, because I know you did a lot of research for it. I mean, you put in your time for the research, but just kind of tell us why you chose those locations and how it kind of came about.
Sure. I originally probably had 30 or 40 on a list. It was just, I was compiling stories for originally just Lincoln. I was only going to do Lincoln because that's where I lived. And so I'd heard those stories growing up, and like you, I'd also read Guide to the Ghost of Lincoln, and had been to those locations and checked them out myself, the ones that I could find in there. Some of them are a little bit obscure.
Yeah,
But I had a list of, just related to stories I had heard over the years, places that were popular, oral history wise, and even like written history wise. And then I sort of broke them down, and my approach was to not just tell the ghost stories. My approach was to also try to uncover why the ghost stories exist, because to me, I feel like that's a important component. And I wanted to share the history of Nebraska in a different way. So I think that sometimes people think that history is very boring. I love history.
Yeah,
I
I do
think
too.
it's fun. But I think it's even more fun when it has a little bit of a different spin on it, or if it's a little bit odd or weird, you know. So those things were, you know, I'm attracted to those things. But so what I did was I started researching every single one of the ghost stories that I had on the list. I wanted to make sure that it was something that was substantial enough ghost story wise. I didn't want it to be just like one something really, you know, it could have been like, oh, that street corner over there is haunted, but we don't really know anything else about it. It's just you know, it could be just anything. So
Right.
I took stories that had some depth to them, some information that I could run with, and then I just started researching based off of that. And then once I started to compile evidence for those in terms of just the historical, you know, significance of those locations, then that's how I made the decision for each chapter, because I wanted them to have some substance. There were a few chapters that I really wanted to write. Lake Street Lake was one of them. And I didn't, because I could not find anything historically that would link to the hauntings. Does that mean that it's not haunted? Of course not. That doesn't mean that. I just, when I was, the approach to the book is historically based, so I wanted to make sure that I was sharing history. Some of the worst history from Lincoln, some of it's really awful, or from other parts of Nebraska. So it's like you know, there are bad things that happen, but those are also important elements of the history of our towns, and how, you know, we shape these stories orally, especially over time, and how sometimes they evolve and they are shared because people are very interested in them. So it was just a matter of breaking those elements down, finding you know, what I believe. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because I found historical evidence related to these locations that the ghost stories are actually associated with those historical events. I just thought that those were very, very interesting things that happened in those locations that could have contributed to perhaps maybe even the lore. And it doesn't mean that it's haunted. It just means that there is lore associated with it enough to make it haunted, and to describe these things that are happening now. And I believe that the ones that I chose are ones that people have had true experiences at, that have shared those experiences with others. And usually there's something significant that happened in those locations. And those are the places that I researched and tried to share that information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you really did a great job. I saw, you know, I looked into the Lake Street deal quite a bit through the Guides of the Ghost of Lincoln. Because of that, I do have a ghost story for you of that. It's not my own, but everyone has kind of a weird story of some of these.
Right.
So I have a friend who, when I started this podcast, well, the paranormal one, but basically this one is a paranormal one, let's be honest, because but I call it the Super Show now, so I can talk to other people as well. But he gets a hold of me and he said, you know what? I went to a field trip at Lake Street when I was a kid, and we're walking around it, you know, because I guess he went to school not far from there. And he said, I looked over and I saw an old man and a dog, and the old man was sitting there with a fishing pole, fishing basically to nut. And he said, I was a kid, mind you, but he said, I didn't pay any mind to it for instance. So I thought it was weird. He said he turned around, looked away, turned back, guy and dog were gone. And I thought, well, that's a really cool story. You know, I can't say that it's a ghost. I can't say it's a real haunting. You know, I mean, I don't know what my friend was like as a kid, but I doubt he was on drugs at that time. So,
Right.
but it was a really cool story, and it just adds to the fun of telling a ghost story. It's just like it's a fishing story. This one was literally a fishing and a ghost story, but you know, maybe it's an exaggeration, maybe it isn't, but it's that type of thing that keeps us going. I mean, when people tell me that, now I've been there many times, and I've with instruments, I've had absolutely nothing happen, probably, you know, the majority of the time at Lake Street. But I enjoy going there just like I enjoy going to most of these places. But what would you say of all of the were you able to go to all of the places that you had written and actually investigated, or did you just kind of take the more of a historical approach to it?
I believe at this, like, I believe I was able to visit all of them. I'm trying to think. The book was published a couple of years ago, so I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
think of if there is. Oh, there was one spot that I could not go to, and that's because it's off limits to everyone, so no one
Mhm.
go there. And it was associated with the penitentiary, so that's a restricted area. You can't go there. So that was based off of historical evidence that I found related to the prison and things that have happened there, and associated with that particular cemetery. So I've never actually been there. I've never stepped foot there, and but I thought that the stories were really important to Lincoln, and especially associated with the prison. And there's a lot of history there with the prison, and so I just yeah I believe everywhere else though. Um, I would have to. I mean, there were some places that I had visited multiple times before that, but I went out to Spring Ranch, visited that area, been out to Fremont, to Bernard Park. Yeah, I mean, and some of these, they're just outdoor areas, so it's kind of hard. I never investigated any of them. I didn't really. I did try to test out some of the theories related to some of the locations like 20th and Washington, the cold spot, and things like that. But it was most of these places are all the places that I chose are places that are technically, except for the cemetery, like local open places for the most part. And so you can visit them. And I don't know. I don't know if it's possible through the prison to get to be able to visit that cemetery. I would assume it's probably pretty hard. But I wanted to try to include as many places as possible that people could just go, just like I did. I just went and visited those spots. And like Seven Sisters Road, it's a road.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
road, so you can go
and
there.
right, and people live out there, so it's also about respecting people's areas, where they live, where they're at. They know that these stories are associated with these areas, whether I'm sure a lot of people that live around these places that don't believe in them, and they have every right to not believe them, and if they don't, and so yeah, I visited most of them.
Yeah.
I believe the only one is just the cemetery because it's off limits. But yeah, I've been to all of them. So at this point, and check them out. But I did really rely on the research. I really did rely on, because for me it was more so about sharing people's stories associated with them and sharing the history. It wasn't about doing an investigation or debunking or
Yeah.
trying to validate. The stories that I have heard, if those are the stories that people are telling me, I it's it I don't know why that they would be sharing. It was a lot of like sharing the same stories over and over again, the same sort of instances. So to me, it wasn't about investigating these locations. It was about sharing the stories and then trying to understand historically, especially as communities, and as people, why we share them and where they come from. So yeah, but I did visit them.
Perfect. The cemetery is always one, and I would love to. I've always wanted to go there, but I would obviously be respectful, but I was always afraid. Like you're next to the prison. I figured like maybe they'd pop a couple rounds off at me or something. So I was I
Yeah.
was
Well,
always too terrified.
you do not want to go back there because that is a restricted area and they will send someone out to kick you out and you probably could get arrested.
Yeah,
So,
and
and
you can
also
end up
it's
in the prison, right? So what are you
right,
gonna
right.
do?
It's also a matter of respect. We're talking
Yeah,
about a cemetery, whether there's ghost stories associated with them or not. You still have to respect the dead and you still have to respect the
exactly.
people that look after them. And so but yeah, definitely don't go in an area that is guarded by individuals who are in towers.
For sure. It just seems like the wrong thing to do, like
Yeah.
the ominous prison next to it. They literally have weapons up there. Like it just seems like a horrible idea all around.
Yeah, I would not recommend.
Now, for the ghouls that want to go into cemeteries, I mean, I will say this, I have investigated some cemeteries. I would say the thing that makes me the angriest when I go to these places is what feels like a lot of disrespect to the area, especially like when I've been to Ball Cemetery many times. Unfortunately, when I was younger, and we were in high school, so we would have to like sneak in, and of course I would love to talk to the owners of the place, and that's around Louisville, and just see if they would allow me to do like a proper investigation, do something. But then again, they're probably tired of people contacting them. They're probably sick.
Right.
So it's like part of me is like, maybe I should just leave it alone. It's like it's a family cemetery. It is a weird place. I will tell you that, but they also will chase you off as well. We got chased off quite a few times when we were younger. But when you're in a cemetery, for example, Clarinda, Iowa, we went to the Clarinda one because my wife is related to Donna Jones, who was associated with the Liska axe murder and all that stuff, right? And so we were going to pay our respects because we thought maybe she was buried there for some reason in Clarinda, and we didn't find her there. But I did notice there was a golf course next to it, and they're hitting golf balls. I mean, we're literally finding golf balls, and I'm like, man, what a place if you're put to rest. Like, what a place for people to go and have this golf course next to it, and there's orange, white, all different colored golf balls all over this cemetery. I just thought, how disrespectful, man. Like, how awful is that? I mean, you got to make a buck somewhere, I guess, but what a terrible place for a golf course, right?
Right.
But it was a
Yeah.
very cool cemetery. I tried out some different things. I like trying out these apps, because I wonder if they're all ridiculous, I mean, honestly, but I like to try them out. I like to test them, the ghost tubes and all that stuff. And you do get weird things, but it's like SLS, for example, like Ghost SLS.
Yeah.
And I already know what Jason would say if I was saying this to him. He'd probably shake me and knock me down. No, he's a really mellow guy, but he would probably tell me those are something. But anyways, you do get things that pop up, and some of it's weird. But like, you're in a cemetery, you've got stones everywhere, so the SLS is going to pick up all sorts of shapes, and you can't say that it's a haunting. I mean, I put one on our page just to show people, like, it's literally I just tell people, you tell me what you think. I'm not telling you it's a ghost. I'm not saying it's definitive it's haunting, but there's ones where figures are rolling around. They're doing all sorts of, like, there's one where a guy looked like he's literally rolling around in his grave. Grandpa's upset over whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I just, they're making money off of it. So to me, it's like, could all of the equipment really be that good, through our phone? You get what I'm saying? I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe they're smarter than me, but I some of it I think's hogwash. Some of it I think could actually be pretty compelling.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Jason and I have tested a few apps, just some of them that are almost like an Ovilus, like they give you words and things like that. We always run them on airplane mode. We never run them off of Wi-Fi, or
Yeah,
we try to make sure that there's as little interference. Does not mean that it's not giving us something
right.
that isn't real. It's hard to tell, but occasionally it's kind of fun to just sort of play with different ways to do things and to test out different options and to
Of
see if
course.
maybe, because you just never know. That's the act of science, is you're just trying to figure out what's the best route to go about this. And sometimes it's a matter of just testing out things that maybe you didn't think you would, but you're like, hey, why not,
Right.
especially like what you said. We'll go to places, and the majority of the time it's quiet. It's just we're spending hours, trying to hear things and see things, and maybe nothing happens. And then, I mean, there's sometimes where we might get a couple of things that we can't really explain, and then some nights it is just overwhelming. But the overwhelming is the rarity. So sometimes it's a matter of just sort of playing with different devices and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And you got to be open-minded about everything, so you
Yeah.
never know in this field. There's no there's no there's I mean, I don't want to say there's no weird thing to try, but I'm sure there is. But it's a matter of trying everything. You have to, just to see for yourself.
Well, why not? I mean, my friend Kirk, he always says, why not give them the most opportunities to communicate in the most ways? And he will bring like a ridiculous amount of stuff. I mean, like he'll have tables set up with with everything you can think of, things to use. It's like a smorgasbord of stuff for people to try to test things out. And I think that that's a really interesting way of doing it. You know, sometimes, I mean, why not? We went to Malvern on an investigation this week, myself and my small team, and to Malvern Manor. And it was cool. You know, oddly, when I go to places like that where I hear that there's so much, I never go into it with a preconceived notion that things are going to happen. I actually go with the opposite. And not that nothing's going to happen, but just it's probably going to be like most ghost investigations, peaceful, quiet, nothing really happening. Oh, that's cool over there, you know, that thing smells over there. What but it's not like you know, the movies where things are popping off all the time. It can be if you're in some places, but I would say that's pretty rare. But you know, I tried out different apps. I've been really interested in this Necrometer app, and I'll tell you what. And I'm not, and you know, so what I do is I built a spirit box of my own, and a lot of people will call that complete garbage. You know, horse hockey, a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? But I looked at all the prototypes that everybody did online, and I just matched it. I mean, I'm a musician. I have pedals galore. I have all sorts of stuff. So why not? So I did that. I put it on. I used an SB7 to sweep. We took the antenna off, and you know, so basically, I'm trying to eliminate any radio stations from coming through. I just want the white noise to go, and we really didn't get anything. What I did notice is a lot of times one radio station will come through at the exact same time every time it sweeps. And so, you know, we always document that, like 102 point whatever keeps coming through, even though there's no antenna. If you get a voice on there through a noise gate and everything, and it's pretty clear, I'd say that's pretty compelling stuff. But I have yet to get a clear voice through the SB7 in this manner. So I tried it with Bluetooth. I put Bluetooth to it, and ran the Necrometer. We did get some interesting responses to questions. You know, like we were in one room where we were asking questions, you know, asking if they wanted us to leave, and we got a clear. And mind you, I had it on airplane mode. You know, I made sure that there was nothing around me to interfere. You know, it's not on Wi-Fi. It's just straight the app. There was a clear voice that came out that said "sit." And we all heard it. And so we asked, you know, would you like us to sit down? Do you want me to sit down? And it said sit again, the same tone, same everything. So I sat down. So that type of stuff I would say is compelling. Some of the other stuff, it's just a bunch of gibberish. I don't know where it comes from, but I would warn the person out there using all these apps, just like this one. I would warn you that you do the test it. Like I'll say things like trigger words that I feel if they set it up in a certain way that it could, you know, bring out a response. So I'll say weird stuff like I'll stand there and go ghost, and I'll wait, and then I'll go haunting. I'll just say things that you would say, you know, on an investigation, haunt, and see if it emits a response right away. But I haven't been able to get it to do that. So I guess the whole point of that is just have a little bit of have a mind. So like have a mind for investigation. Don't just get one of those. It's a $10 app, so they're making good money off of it. Don't just turn something like that on and just immediately say, "Oh my God!" Throw your hands up and run out of your house. Something came through. My house is haunted by demons. It's the devil's here. You know, it's not necessarily true. Don't get all worked up about it. But these apps are very interesting, man. I know, yeah, I know Jason's opinion on it. I really like his approach, man. I'd love to investigate with you guys sometime. I think that our team and you guys would mesh really well because we're all really calm. We're not ripping our shirts off, and not that I have because I don't. But if I did, I'm not doing the old Bagans thing, you know. But
Right.
Hey there, fellow follicle enthusiasts. We have a sponsor that's about to make your beards go wild with delight. Brace yourselves for the one and only, the elegant Sasquatch. Are you ready to unleash your outer beast?
Cain, I've been waiting for this moment my entire bearded life. But tell me, how can the elegant Sasquatch help us awaken our inner beasts?
Oh, my hairy companion, the elegant Sasquatch has a treasure trove of beard products that will have your whiskers partying like it's the wildest night in the forest. From their aromatic beard oils to their beastly balms and buttery concoctions, they've got everything you need to make your beard sing with joy.
I can almost hear my beard belting out its own rendition of I Will Survive.
Your beard is in for a treat, my friend, and here's the best part. Every single product is handmade with love. Picture this, a team of Sasquatch artisans rocking their aprons and wielding their grooming tools, crafting beard goodies that will blow your mind. It's like a hairy fiesta of craftsmanship.
I can see those Sasquatch artists dancing with their combs and trimmers like they're on a hairy stage.
Absolutely. These bearded maestros pour their heart and soul into every bottle of beard oil, every tin of balm, and every tub of butter. They're like the Michelin-starred chefs of the beard world, creating culinary delights for your facial hair.
My beard is salivating in anticipation.
Well, get ready for your beard to do a happy dance because the elegant Sasquatch has you covered from all angles. Their beard oils will make your whiskers as smooth as a buttery glide. Their balms will sculpt your beard into a masterpiece that would make Da Vinci jealous. Their butters will leave your beard softer than a cloud made of marshmallows, and their washes will cleanse your beard with a scent that's fresher than the waterfalls in the Rockies.
My beard is ready for the bearded revolution.
You can find the Elegant Sasquatch on Instagram and Facebook. They're ready to share their hairy wisdom, showcase their bearded customers, and entertain you with memes that will make your mustache curl with laughter.
I can't wait to join the hairy community and bask in the glory of their bearded memes.
So, folks, get ready to let your beards run wild, unleash your outer beast, and head over to Facebook and Instagram to find the Elegant Sasquatch. Trust me, your beard will thank you, and you'll be the envy of every bearded creature in the virtual forest.
Here's to smelling like a wild creature and embracing your inner Sasquatch.
Cheers to that, my fellow bearded brethren, and stay elegant with the Elegant Sasquatch.
Oh man, sorry for the interruption, everybody, but I'm not sorry about giving you this fun sponsor of mine. You know, we got the Elegant Sasquatch. You guys got to hear my ridiculous commercial, you know, and it really is a great product. But we're back here with Tayden Bundy, the author of Beyond Lincoln, a history of Nebraska hauntings, and I just want to once again point everybody in the direction of his book. That's the key here, and just get to know this guy. I think the question on everybody's mind really is, for those of us that have read it, is there going to be a sequel? Are you going to do another book? That's what we all want to know. We're chomping at the bit. What do you got?
I have thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm currently not in the process of creating a second one, but it's always a possibility. You never know. I mean, I think that one of the things that I really wanted to do in the first one was to add more stories from Omaha, and I didn't actually do that because I had trouble finding the historical research that I needed. I used a lot of for the book. I used a lot of information from newspapers and obviously people's personal stories and stories that I had heard over the years, just orally uh, passed down through people to people that I'd heard all throughout my life. And I was having trouble just getting a lot of the newspaper articles from the past from Omaha. Those weren't as accessible as a lot of the other documents from other parts of Nebraska. So
Right.
I really, if I did do another one, I would really like to focus on it being more adding some more stuff from Omaha and some other places in Nebraska for sure. I think that there were maybe one or two from Lincoln as well that I wanted to touch on. So I mean, I have locations that I would like to explore. I'm not currently writing for those. I also write a lot of fiction, so that's been a lot of my focus over the last couple of years. But it doesn't mean that it won't happen. It could. It's just a matter of it's a big time commitment researching these places. I spent a lot of time at the Historical Society. I at History Nebraska. I went in there on the weekends and after after work, if it was still open, and I read a lot of newspaper articles, read a lot of books, and so it's a very and then I listened to a lot of stories, researched a lot of stories, and got newer accounts from locations. So it's a lot. And then sometimes, like I said earlier, I researched Lake Street Lake like crazy, and then just couldn't find enough to feel like I had enough information to say, hey, this is what I think is possibly the reason why these stories exist, or here's some of the evidence related to why this story has been being told. And so it's just a matter of, sometimes you spend a lot of time and then you end up not even being able to use things. So but yeah, it's there. I have a list. I have a pretty strong list of 10 more, I believe, maybe 12. So stories, and locations. And so yeah, it's never gone. It's always there, but who knows when. I can't give you a date or tell you that it's for sure going to happen. It's just a matter of whether it actually does.
Well, we're gonna hope, man. We're gonna hope and wish that you do another one. The sequel's always bloodier and crazier than the last one. So we're really gonna be clamoring for this thing.
Right.
But tell people who are investigating what you said, what you hit on is so important. It's not just as an author. If you're doing the investigating, where does someone go to really investigate this? So where can your common person go? A person, just a regular guy, go to research this stuff, and how do they go about it?
I think that there's a lot of the research that I did, and I don't know if this will really, go along with investigating the paranormal in general. But
Mhm.
my take was that I really wanted to share some of the background of, especially some of these, smaller towns and the history behind them, some of the historical value of why these towns were created and where they came from and how they evolved into the communities that they are. And so I looked at a lot of like history related to who created the towns. So I did spend time at History of Nebraska. I went into their historical society section, into their reference section. I looked at their newspapers. I looked at there's a lot of really great books from towns related to their history, the people that created these towns, why they exist, who were the first people who, called it whatever it may be called. And so it's also just a matter of looking into those elements for me. So I did a lot of research related to that. I read a lot of town history books. I Whether I use them or not, and I read a lot of newspaper articles. I'm telling you, just a lot. I also looked at a lot of census records. There's some really great online research tools now. Family Search is one of them, which is free, that you can use. Ancestry, that's expensive,
Yeah.
but I did get some aspects of some of those. So I mean, it was a lot of looking at who was there at certain time periods, why, and what they were doing, and how those could be associated potentially with the ghost stories. And like I said, just because I came to the conclusion that that might be possibly why these ghost stories exist, doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the definitive reason. It's just the conclusion that I came to based on my evidence. So based on the documentation of all the things that I found. So it could be that, there might have been something else that happened 100 years before that wasn't documented. And that's
Right.
the reason why these stories exist. And that's possibly the reason why, there's a woman in white at Antelope Park, or there's, a ghost that is around Lake Street Lake. There's a lot of reasons why those things could happen, but I like to look at what happened within certain time periods, and try to find out when these stories kind of began. And then so yeah, it was a lot of research historically through some of our local areas. Every town for the most part has a little historical society. And I talked to a lot of people at those places. I would email them and talk to them on the phone, ask them questions, and they would give me information about their towns and how, maybe some of these stories even came about based off of some of the historical events and things that happen in their town. So they're a great resource. They love to share history. So if that's what you're looking for, then those are great resources for you. But there's a lot of online stuff too, and most of the newspapers are online now too. So you have to subscribe to most of them. But yeah, there's a plethora of information out there, but it's also about putting it all together and piecing it together correctly. I'm not saying I got it all right. I'm just saying that, what I came about and what I tried to produce was the best of my ability. So if someone ever came in and said, "Hey, this isn't actually, this also happened," I would be totally open to listening to those things, because I think that it's important for us to keep an open mind about what is potentially, the truth. And that's, and there could be multiple truths to things. So, but yeah, there's a lot of places that you can go. Historical societies.
I think you did a fantastic job, and you actually inspired me. And I think what you've done is going to inspire a lot of other people. Like I myself, when I read your book, I said to myself, I want to write a book. You know what I mean? Like I've been a writer for years, but I've never published a book. And when I saw your book, I was like, man, this is so great. Like it was done very well. I felt like you researched things well. You listed all your sources. You did everything you're supposed to do. Me personally, like I grew up out in Arnold Heights, in Air Park area of Lincoln, Northwest Lincoln, for the listener who doesn't know. And I can say with the certainty that there's so many ghost stories out in that neighborhood alone. I want to write a book about it. I get people all the time. I did a Curse of Arnold Heights series a couple years ago, and I had so many people reach out to me that it was overwhelming on how much these people are going through, hauntings, things that people are so afraid of, these duplexes that they live, that they won't even drive down the street. I mean, that to me is wild. Like I've investigated out there. I've seen things of my own. I've lived in a haunting out there. It's real, and I don't think I think it's ridiculous for people to just shuffle those ghost stories off. So I think that it truly could be one of the more haunted neighborhoods in Nebraska for sure. But I don't know why no one's ever touched on this, because people have been. I've seen reports on different websites of people saying this stuff. Everyone just kind of like grazes over it a little bit. What do you think the history is out there? Because that's something I appreciate you listing, like places you went to and whatnot, because I mean, I myself am trying to research the history out there. I mean, I have a pretty good picture with the former Air Force Base and all of that stuff. I know they had a brief polio outbreak out there, and all of that, where it used to be Huskerville. But I mean, I feel like maybe there's more to it. Maybe it's a Native American thing that we don't know. I mean, there's 9 Mile Prairie right there. There's creeks around. There's water sources. So it would be a great place for the Native Americans to settle down in certain spots. So I wonder that, but I can't find any like resources from any of the. I don't think the Native American resources that I've tried to tap really want to talk to me about any of that stuff. So, I mean, what do you think about the neighborhood? Have you heard any stories of hauntings out there? Do you know anyone who's lived out there and had anything that they've said?
What's funny about Air Park is I spent a lot of time at Air Park in high school, because my best friend is from Air Park. And I've been out there quite a bit, but I have not really heard many stories about Air Park,
Yeah.
which is just interesting. It never crossed, when I was researching for the book, it never actually I never saw anything about Air Park. I've never really heard much about Air Park. I don't know, but it's interesting what you bring up, because it's like uh it's like a separate, almost like community of its own out there. It's
Right.
like it's a whole neighborhood. It's a big neighborhood.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there's lots of history related to that area. And I know 9 Mile Prairie, I know what you're talking about. I've actually been down there. So I've spent time in Air Park, but yeah, Air Park stories don't ever really come up, which is interesting. But I mean, now interesting to look into it myself because
Yeah, please
I
do, man.
yeah.
Please, somebody talk about it because it's out there, man.
Yeah, well, and if I ever hear anything, I'll definitely share that with you too, pass that along to you, especially if you're considering digging deeper into, the history and because Air Park does, I don't know the history, so I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about it. But I know that it's a older part of town and it has its own rich history out there. So and it's sort of separate, like I said, and I'm sure that the community out that in that area is strong. Everybody knew each other when a lot of people knew each other when I would go out there, and I just thought it was kind of neat, like how that whole area was situated because everybody would go out to Tanker Hill and go sledding, and there was like all these events and stuff that would happen out there, and it was very I'm sure that people have told stories to each other, but I don't know. I never heard any ghost stories. I don't know why.
Well, I'll list a few. I'll just list a few things that people have mentioned. Okay, so I've been told there's a wooded area. There's some wooded areas out there. I've been told that people have seen like massive, like shadow-sized cryptid type things with red eyes screeching. Okay, so there's
Right.
one. I've been told of houses so active where people are getting scratched, growls, hit, punched, mirrors blowing off their walls. I mean, like Amityville type stuff, right? um, I've been told about man, I've been told about it all, to be honest. I've been told about a guy who supposedly, and I haven't found any research on this, a guy supposedly in like the 90s or early 2000s spontaneously combusted out there. And
Wow.
that's the, and you'd think
That's
there'd be like a ton of stuff on that, right?
right.
Like I have a buddy who just claims up and down, like, man, you don't remember that? Like, because I mean, like, I was dialed into this place. I lived there for most of my life. In
Right.
the duplex housing, in the new area, all of it, like the whole deal. But I don't remember a guy spontaneously combusting. Like that would be something that I feel would like be blowing off in my mind. So
Right.
this is the stuff I hear. I hear, my mom did witchcraft, all this crazy stuff happened. I hear so many wild things and I take it all seriously. I know I laugh about it because when you're talking about two human beings talking about some of this stuff sounds completely asinine. I'm sure we laugh about it, but I take it extremely seriously. I mean, I've had countless emails, countless messages from people, and their feelings are real. Like they are truly scared. And I just feel like, but the neighborhood's so cool. It's historical. It kind of checks off all the boxes. Really, I'm kind of pitching it to you. I'm hoping since you're probably a better writer than me, I'm like, here, please take the ball on this. But
Well,
somebody's
I
got to
mean,
write about this place or do something, man.
right, right. Well, and the interesting thing about some of these stories too, I mean, the spontaneously combusting, that could have been like maybe they wrote it off in the newspapers as if like someone dropped a cigarette or something and something happened, or or
Right.
they have lit a candle and maybe they wrote it off as if it was something that wasn't that. And or it could potentially be that sort of evolved into a story about spontaneous combustion that
Exactly.
was, who knows, maybe it was just like kids telling stories, which is also a fun element of some of these, things that happen in, especially in neighborhoods, like, oh, didn't you hear about, so and so down the street,
Yeah.
he started on fire and there's no reason why, and then kids start telling each other that, and then and who knows, but it's and so sometimes those things might just get written off as nothing, but I'm sure that people telling each other stories too about witchcraft or things that they've seen in areas that are a little bit scarier, like the woods. There's always the possibility that there's maybe some historical significance to that, and especially if you're getting multiple people saying the same things.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of, yeah, looking into maybe what in sometimes it's harder with some of those like stories that are just, I saw a shadow, and it's like, well, it's hard to research some of those things because a lot of the stories that I researched for my book were they were stories that had been told for years by multiple people having multiple experiences in these same locations. And
Mhm.
that creates the ability to be able to research them better just because you're getting, like, oh, it was a little boy in this area around this time period. So then you can kind of start with that. So it might be just that when you're looking for this information about Air Park, it could be that you just don't have enough information to be able to continue to go with it and to try to find more. And so maybe it's just a matter of still just talking to more people and getting those stories that you're seeing that are similar to each other. So then you have a little bit more of a basis to go off of. So it's just it doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that you just don't have enough.
Well, my idea was this. Yeah, my idea was I was gonna do like you ever watch a haunting on like on Travel Channel or something where they tell ghost stories?
Right.
I was gonna do something similar to that. I was gonna take the ghost stories that they've given me, the names and faces have changed, but the story's there, and just kind of give them a ghost story. This is what a ghost story sounds like. This is what it and then dive into a little bit of, I'll do the research, dive into a little bit of, did something happen there? Talk about the area. Because, I mean, to be honest, people are talking from one side all the way to the other. I mean, a massive range of the entire neighborhood. I've mapped it out. Like, it's all over. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's completely everywhere where people are saying the haunting stuff is. And I'm not saying that this neighborhood is. I can't say for certain that it's haunted. I can't say for sure that ghosts are roaming the place and Lucifer himself sits on a throne somewhere. But but I can say that these people are telling me this stuff. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I will write the book. Maybe I won't. Ghost stories are fun to tell. That's why we are talking about it now. The history is, to me, is even more fascinating than the ghosts themselves, which I think you and I are very similar on that. So I mean, the jury's out. If you write it, great. If I write it, great. If somebody else hears this and goes, that sounds like a pretty good idea, and they run with it, wonderful. I'll support their cause too. I'll have them on the show, and we'll pat each other on the back, and I'll pat them on the back more than me. It doesn't matter who writes it, but it's just really good for this stuff is really good to talk about it. What we're doing right now, Tayden, is we're talking about the paranormal and about history. And I feel like this is the most important thing is let's stop. I feel like history, for example, I feel like we're getting like weird watered down versions of history right now. And I think that's so terrifying. And I hope that I'm not saying like a conspiracy theory wise, because we could go there if we wanted, but I feel like our history needs to continue to be told. I've read about like certain areas, denouncing like the Nazis in general, and like denouncing the idea that the Nazis killed Jews and everything else. And I find that to be completely dangerous and completely terrifying, because why would you try to erase something like that? You know what I mean? Why are we erasing our history? History is the most important thing aside from science. I feel that we should be looking into. But why do you think that is? I mean, that's kind of a long-winded question, of course, but that's what this should be called, is long-winded questions with Cain Stevens. But why do you feel our history is being taught correctly, especially in schools now? Or do you think they're starting to graze over things and kind of water things down because it hurts people's feelings? That's my question to you.
That's a heavy question.
I'm going to lay the book down. Boom.
I think that, and this is my own personal opinion, I think that when we have to look at some of the things that have gone on, especially, let's just talk about the United States, because that's what, I know the most.
Yeah.
We talk about the history of how, America might or might not have been created and who wrote that history and why. Sometimes it's not the best to hear about the things that you don't want to hear about. You don't want to hear about the gruesome things that happen and the bad things that happen to people. But the reality of that is that it did happen. Those things did exist. They shape the things that exist still today. And so if we don't talk about them and we ignore them, then we're just doomed to repeat that. And so if we don't look into, I know that you gave the example of, the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And it's, if you want to pretend like that didn't happen, you're just doomed to repeat it in some way. So and talking about it doesn't make the people now bad people. We're not bad people because those things happened before. We're going to be bad people if we don't recognize the fact that they existed, and that we can move forward from that in a way that's inclusive to everyone and everyone's lived experiences, and understand that we as people need to include the voices that were not involved with that. When you're talking about the Holocaust, you're talking about erasing the voices of the people who were actually hurt during that time period, not the people who hurt. So it's a matter of continuing to allow those voices to be elevated and those histories to be told. And I think that that is hard for many of the people who are privileged in this country, in America, to hear that, that there were bad things that happened. And that doesn't make us bad people. It just means that if we continue to do those things, yes, that will make us bad people, but we can recognize that they existed and move forward. So I think that telling the truth about history is incredibly important. And I think allowing there to be an alternative to that history that has never been told to be exposed is also very important. And so that's my 2 cents. I think that we should listen to, certain people wrote the history books,
Right.
um, because they had the accessibility, the privilege, the ability to do so. But there are a lot of voices that were never heard, and we can't erase those voices. So I think that you know, some of history is hard to hear, but it doesn't take it away. It doesn't mean it didn't exist. So yeah.
Can you imagine a world where we didn't read history books and we just listened to like our drunk uncle tell us like what happened,
Right.
or Frank down the street said that said this happened in Germany years ago, or this happened
Right.
in Mexico, or whatever, like could you imagine being that shut off and that ridiculous? Like that's crazy. But we live in a great time where we not only have books and we not only have civilized culture, but we also have like all of this stuff at our disposal. We have a library of things we can literally go to museums on VR that we would never be able to go to. We can do all these things that we couldn't before. I know technology gets a bad rap, especially right now because of AI coming out, and everyone's afraid that Skynet's going to kill everybody and robots are coming. But I say that we got a pretty exciting time where we have a great thing on our hands where we could be super smart, like superhuman beings, if we would just open our minds and actually read those books and actually consume things that are, more important than, you know, Ed made a cheese sandwich yesterday on Facebook type stuff. But man, we live in a wild world. Well, um, I think that we've touched on a lot of great topics. Is there anything in particular before we end this conversation, and that you would like to promote before we wrap this thing up?
I don't know.
I mean, the
It's a
book,
very good
obviously,
question.
right?
Right. Yeah.
History,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just hope that people keep telling their stories. I think it's also important for, a lot of, when I was much younger, when I was in high school, I started my own paranormal group back then. And this was, almost 20 years ago. And so I started my own paranormal group, and people were so receptive to that. That was like when internet was still kind of in, we were all still good in chat rooms and talking to each other, and in all email. That was it. And
Yeah.
I would get stories like crazy from people about their experiences, and hauntings, and places that they lived in, and things that had happened to them around Lincoln, and even in some other places in Nebraska at the time. And now I feel like people are just a little bit more scared to share their stories. And I think it's because they think that they're going to be judged by that. And I hope that people continue to share their stories. I think that people continue to talk about the hauntings and the ghosts, and even the history of places. And so, that's what I hope that people will continue to do, because it shapes a lot of our communities, and it connects us. And so, you know, I just hope that that's something that people will continue to do. And that's what I'm hoping to do through my book, is that I'm hoping to share people's stories and share some of the history, and keep people involved and loving to those two things, and meshing them together and understanding their significance.
Well, you're doing an important thing, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you for writing the book. We're looking for that bloody, blood squirting sequel coming up, coming soon. But thank you, Tayden, for your time. I really do appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Take care.
You too.